The 12 Dancing Princesses. There was once a king who was as beloved by all his people as he was honest, kind, and fair. The king had a beautiful and wise daughter called Emma. She was a great comfort to him. But as he was not getting any younger, he hoped that she would find a good and loving husband. The princess, however, was very choosy about who she would marry. One day, the king said to the princess, "My dear Emma, what am I to do? We have entertained all of the fairest noblemen in the land, yet you do not like any of them." Emma listened to her father, and when he had finished, she took his hands in hers and replied, "Dear father, the man who I will wed will become the king of this great land, and I want to know that he will be as wise and as good a king as you are." She then proposed a challenge. It just so happened that for many years, the king's shoemaker had been kept very busy making shoes for the princess. Every day, he would make a new pair of slippers, and the following day, the slippers would be completely worn through. The king, who had feared for his daughter's safety, had posted guards outside Emma's room each night. But every morning, when questioned, they could never explain why the slippers were worn out, as the princess had never left her quarters. This amused the princess, but now she saw it as an opportunity to help her father fulfill his dream. She put it to the court. "Whoever can discover the secret as to why my shoes are worn through each morning will be the man that I will marry." On hearing the news, every man in the land wished to try and wed the princess. Noblemen from all over the world came to try their luck. There were princes from Persia, emperors from China, and even a lord from England. They would dine with the king and Princess Emma, and just before 9 o'clock, the shoemaker would arrive with a brand new pair of beautiful slippers. The princess would clap her hands and thank the shoemaker, and after he left, she would offer the nobleman a warm drink before they would all retire. Once she had entered her quarters, the nobleman would take up his position outside her door. But when the morning came and the king summoned each nobleman to the courtroom, Princess Emma would produce a pair of worn-out shoes, and the gentleman could never explain how the slippers had become so tattered and threadbare when the princess had apparently never left her room. One day, a soldier called Gilbert was returning from war. He stopped by a tree to catch his breath and took a flask from his knapsack and had a drink. An old lady passing by stopped and spoke to the soldier.
"Good soldier,"
she began,
"I have been traveling a long way. Would you mind sharing your water with me?"
Gilbert was only too happy to help the old lady and passed the flask to her. As soon as the old lady took a sip of the water, she transformed into a beautiful fairy. Gilbert could not believe his eyes and stood frozen in amazement. But the fairy smiled and said, "You are a good man, and I would like to help you find your happiness." She then told Gilbert all about Princess Emma and her proclamation to marry the man who would discover the secret of her worn-out shoes. Gilbert listened to the fairy's story with great interest, but when she had finished, he said to her, "Dear lady, what has this got to do with me?" "You are going to discover the secret, and I will help you," replied the fairy. She then handed Gilbert a bundle, and when he opened it, it revealed a cape. "This is a magic cape," she explained. "Put it on, and it will make you invisible." Then you will be able to discover Princess Emma's secret easily." The soldier was delighted. "One more thing," said the fairy. "When the princess offers you a warm beverage before bedtime, do not drink it." Gilbert gazed at the cape, then turned to ask the fairy how he could ever repay her. But she had disappeared. He set forth for the castle. The king welcomed him, and the minute Gilbert laid his eyes on Princess Emma, he was bewitched by her beauty and radiance. That night, he dined with the princess and the king, and just before 9 o'clock, the shoemaker arrived with a brand new pair of slippers for the princess. After the shoemaker had gone, they all retired to bed. As they headed to their rooms, the princess offered Gilbert a warm drink. He thanked her, but when she turned her back, he poured the drink into a nearby pot plant. The princess retired for the night, and Gilbert took up his position outside her door. 10 o'clock came and went. 11 o'clock came and went. Then, just before midnight, he heard the door of the princess's room begin to open, and he quickly shut his eyes. Princess Emma tiptoed out of the room, pausing to stare at the soldier who pretended to snore. She giggled to herself and then headed down the hallway. When she was a good distance away, Gilbert put on the invisibility cape and followed her. She entered the library and went over to a large book of fairy tales by the Brothers Grimm and turned it sideways. The minute she did, a trapdoor on the floor opened to reveal a staircase. The princess climbed down the staircase, with the invisible soldier following close behind her. At the bottom of the stairs was a path, and on either side there were thousands of trees with silver leaves. Gilbert broke off a leaf so he could prove to the king that he had followed his daughter. As he snapped the leaf from the tree, the princess spun around, wondering what the noise was. But she couldn't see anything behind her, and so she continued on her journey. Finally, she came to the shore of a lake. She smiled as she approached, for standing at the lake's edge were 11 princesses. The soldier had never seen so many princesses. There was Snow White, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Thumbelina, Rapunzel, and Jasmine. And even the Princess Eloise who had guessed Rumpelstiltskin's name. Also present were the princess who had kissed a frog, the one who had slept on a pea, Princess Beauty who had fallen in love with a beast, and Princess Eliza who had rescued her 11 brothers from becoming swans. Princess Emma greeted the princesses and then hopped into a pretty little boat that was bobbing up and down on the lake. There were 11 more beautiful little boats floating on the lake, and sitting on each of them was a prince who now reached his hand to help his princess climb aboard. Just before they set off, the invisible soldier hopped into the boat with Princess Emma. Then, the boat set off to a beautiful palace decorated with colorful lights. As they got closer, he could hear music coming from inside the palace. The boats arrived, and the 12 happy princesses skipped up the stairs and into a giant ballroom where they began to dance. It was a wonderful sight to witness, but Gilbert felt sad, for he saw that Princess Emma had no one to dance with. As the night wore on, Princess Rose, who had been asleep for 100 years, insisted that Princess Emma dance with her Prince Charming, and Princess Eliza offered to bring one of her 11 brothers next time. He watched as Princess Emma took turns dancing with the princes. At 4 a.m, Cinderella said to the others, "I should have worn my glass slippers, for my shoes are worn through." "So are mine," exclaimed Rapunzel. "And also mine," said Snow White. Eventually, the princesses headed back across the lake, with the invisible soldier once again hiding in Princess Emma's boat. As Emma said goodbye to the other princesses, Gilbert tiptoed back along the path until he got to the staircase that wound back into the castle. He made his way back to his seat outside Princess Emma's room, removed the cloak, and waited. It was not long before she returned. She stared at the soldier, who once again pretended to snore, and then she entered her chambers. The next morning, the king requested an audience with Gilbert in the main courtroom. "Now, soldier," began the king, "can you explain why my daughter's shoes are always worn out each morning?" "I can, your majesty," replied Gilbert. He then told the king all about the night's adventures of following the princess out of the castle, along the path with the silver trees, and then the journey by boat to the beautiful palace, and all about the 12 dancing princesses. Then he produced one of the silver leaves and handed it to the king. The king was astonished and turned to his daughter and asked her if the story was true. And Princess Emma nodded. "But good soldier," she said, "when I left you last night, you were sound asleep." The soldier smiled and replied, "Forgive me, princess, but I was only pretending." He then explained how he did not consume the drink that she had given him, and all about the invisibility cloak. "My only regret," said the soldier, "was that I had to keep my presence a secret, and that I was not able to ask you to dance with me." Princess Emma was delighted by how clever the soldier was. "You are wise, and I can see that you are also a good man, and with my father's permission, I will happily marry you." The king was overjoyed and immediately began to make preparations. Of course, there would be 11 bridesmaids, and of course, the celebrations would include dancing. And all of the shoemakers in all of the kingdoms were delighted to be kept very busy making shoes for the 12 dancing princesses.